Welcome to another Learner's Mindset discussion. I'm Dwayne Harapnik, and my esteemed colleague is.
Dr. Talissa Thibodeaux.
It's been a little while since we've had the opportunity to come together and talk and share our ideas. And part of that reason is that in the last year and a bit, you've been working in a very different environment. We had worked together very closely for several years at in the School of Education in the Digital Learning and Leading Master's Program, and then we built the foundation for the Applied Digital Learning Program. And then you had the opportunity to take a position as the Dean of the Honors College at Lamar University. And I want to talk to you about some of your experiences, but more specifically, I want to talk to you about how you've gone from being one of the developers or one of the minds behind the learner's mindset approach, which is really a matter of changing the way you think about learning, changing your approach to learning, and then looking at how the learning environment influences learning and manipulating and working with that. And within that approach, we make the argument that you want to move people into a position of higher order thinking, where you're evaluating, analyzing, synthesizing, and creating new ideas, as opposed to just working with content and information and application and regurgitation. So it's really a constructivist approach that helps you solve real world problems. And that's one of the things we argue for, is that the learner's mindset goes well beyond the growth mindset, in the sense that the growth mindset just talks about moving from that fixed mindset state where you can't do anything to the fact that, oh, maybe I can. It goes well beyond the innovator's mindset, where you look for innovative solutions to problems. Well, the learner's mindset combines all those and adds a little bit more, in the sense that it looks at that practical component of the innovator's mindset and looks at those innovations and changes. It also incorporates the notion that you want to grow, but it has an added benefit in the sense that when you view challenges as opportunities for growth, it changes your whole dynamic and approach to what you do. And you've been living that for the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get a sense of what is it like to go from living the theory in the grad program to living the learner's mindset day to day, as you have revamped and rebuilt and reinvigorated the Honors College over the last 2 years. Big question. You can start wherever you want, and then I'll ask questions as we go along. It's over to you, Talissa.
I'm really excited to share how much we've grown over the last couple of years, because when I accepted this position initially, there was no checklist for me. There was no dean in here for over a year, and I think a year and 2 months maybe. So everything kind of evolved on its own, but didn't have the leadership, the purpose, the direction. There was no big, hairy, audacious goals. There were no why, how, what statements, who we are. And there was a guidebook of telling students kind of what to do and how to do it. But I felt that there was a much larger purpose here in the Honors College than just a guidebook or a checklist of here's what you need to do. Right. So the first thing I did stepping into the role was and I spent 4 months, I'll say, chewing on this because it kept me up at night, was to develop that big, hairy, audacious goal. Who are we? Where are we going? What are we doing? But really, we wanted to become the most influential honors college in the state of Texas and beyond, of course. But we'll start with the state of Texas as a realistic goal, if you will. It took me a long time to really figure out what was that big vision that we were going to have. And then from there, starting to develop our why statement and who we inspire students, right? And there's more to it. We inspire students, impact students, innovate, all those things. And then we developed our how statement and our what statement. And of course, I took all that back and I, talked with my team about it. You talked about constructivism. Well, we use a lot of social constructivist ideas, very team-oriented group. I'm a big fan as I'm developing these ideas and thinking things through, that for our team to really be engaged in this thinking, they had to be, involved in the process. So it wasn't just ideas coming from me. These are who our students are going to become. Anyway, I picked up our why, our how, and our what statements, and I was able to develop the honors leadership community online. And so all of our students, all 430 to 480, given the time of year, have e-portfolios, go through that thinking, go through that process themselves. They create big, hairy, audacious goals. They create their why, how, and what statements. They share their learning networks, and then they put all of that onto their e-portfolio. And then from there, they also add some honors experiences and things as well. They actually essentially use that tool to go out and interview with, a lot of them do, or go and get shadowing or internship opportunities. But to dial back, so I don't get too broad too fast, that initial thinking of who we are and breaking that up into why we exist, how we go about doing that, which is, developing significant learning environments through choice, ownership, and voice, authentic learning in the honors courses, and who our students become. They become students who are top tier, or students who apply to top tier schools, get in and get the best internship opportunities and get the best jobs around here in the oil and gas industry, right? Because that's the hub down here in Southeast Texas, in Beaumont, Texas. So developing those statements, like I said, chewed on those for 4 solid months.
So
But I couldn't understand how we existed before without those. Your
okay.
turn.
So just to reiterate, what I'm hearing is that when you went into this position, one of the first things you did is you identified who you were. And when I say you, your organization, the Honors College, the students were part of that. Who were you? Why are we here? Why are we here? Where are we going? Right? Where are you taking these learners? And then how are you going to get there is sort of the other thing that you started to talk about. But before you talked about how we're going to get there, you really had to get clear on the who, the why, and the what it is that you're doing. Now, you said it took 4 months to get it established. Have you finished? Or is that still an ongoing process?
It was very iterative that first 4 months. So I would change this word or change that word. I had you look at it. I had several people look at it. But now it's pretty clear, and it hasn't shifted. And that's how I know I've got it in the right spot, is because it hasn't shifted and it's extremely clear. However, I do go back and measure each piece against itself. Does this connect here? Does it make sense? Does this tie into our BHAG the way we want it to? And then once I got that clear, I was able to move on to some lag and lead measures. So I kind of have those built out pretty clearly, bigger picture lag measure, here of the goal we're looking to do, about 5 of them for the year, big picture ones, and then kind of breaking it up into those lead measures that push the needle on those lag measures. So the lead measures, just kind of small micro goals, I call them, and they kind of push that needle. So I check in every 2-3 months to see where we're at with progress. And I actually have them set out by months: October, November, December. These are our little tiny mini goals that are going to help us move the lead, which will help us move those lag measures, which tie into our big, hairy, audacious goal and all of the other pieces that we're trying to, really become. And I think doing that was a lot of work up front, right? I had to do more than just write down these goals and iterate on them. I had to flesh out our history. I had to flesh out where we were, who we wanted to become. I had to write all this stuff down. I had to write down the inspiration behind it, the learner's mindset. Where did this stuff come from? I know I'm dreaming like you, delusional optimist, but I'm dreaming big. And how do I get that down to something succinct and simple that everyone can understand, the students can understand, the president of the university can, that I can understand? So pages and pages and pages and pages. And then I go back and I iterate each year. But that first 6 months was after I got those statements clear. The next couple months, I spent fleshing out all these other pieces and how they tie together. So if we want to take a step in the direction of civic leadership, service leadership, what does that look like? How can our students engage with that? How does that meet the Honors College requirements for graduation? And what are the best ways that we can offer those opportunities for our students without making them feel like they're being compliant, right? They're not following, I got to follow this checklist. What's really amazing about the Honors College, I'll tell you this, we built creative pathways. So what that means is any student can come in, just about any student who can fit into that mold, the Honors College requirements, have a creative pathway that they build for themselves. So it's like building your own academic track, right? So getting clear on all these goals, what we were doing, one of the first identified needs that I found was we needed creative pathways for these students. Why? Students were coming to me saying, Dr. T, I just don't know that I can graduate with honors college status. Well, let's take a look. I kept hearing this thing over and over, and I'm like, what are we missing here? What's happening? Well, I learned students aren't always taking honors courses when they could, But the bigger picture, and you'll see this all over our website, was where we mapped each learner's pathway, course requirements that they would need, but then they could bundle seminars, topics, contracts, petitions, thesis, independent studies, bundle all these different things together. So essentially, if if myself as dean is following a checklist, right? And I'm trying to do these things, it doesn't actually work for students. I can't follow a checklist if I want things to work for students. They don't follow a checklist. They have to create their independent pathway in the honors college. And that trips the kids up sometimes. Why? It's not clear. It's not A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Well, stick with it. Take your courses and look at the different options and variables you can do. You can make this yours. Why are you fighting this? I mean, so therefore I can't follow a checklist if I'm asking my students not to follow a checklist, right?
No, before I let you go any further, and I want to hear more. I want to make sure that our listeners are aware of a lot of the terminology that you've used that is connected to key foundational courses within the applied digital learning program that we teach that are core to the learner's mindset. You talked about this notion of a BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from Jim Collins' work, where he points to this big North Star that you're working towards. So that goal is there. You've talked about the why, how, and the what, which is Simon Sinek's why, right? Mm-hmm. It's people don't buy into what you do; they buy into why you do it. You've also talked about lead lag measures and other language that comes from either the influencer model or for disciplines of execution. And so what I'm hearing is that just in your conversation about getting started and getting focused and developing these ideas, you've referred to probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 different ideas that you've gleaned from a variety of different places. Mm-hmm. So not only is there no checklist, you're drawing upon a diversity of ideas and information. And like the pathway you're talking about with your learners, you are creating a pathway for your institution. You're building a structure for openness within your organization that allows for those creative pathways that the students can then develop. But I also heard one last little thing. Students have a hard time with that because they want the A leading to the B, leading to the C. They want that linear, simple, tell me what to do approach. And when they are given the freedom and flexibility, they're not sure how to use it. Or is it that they don't want it? These aren't lazy students, are they? Honors students usually aren't very lazy students. They're usually quite active. They're keeners, they're going for it. So, but they still have this tendency to want that recipe, right? Why is that? Have you figured that part out? Because obviously you aren't working within that recipe. You're not. You're drawing upon a diversity of things, and you've had a journey over the last decade where this has come to fruition. But with these students you're talking about, why is it you think that they have this tendency to fall into desiring that checklist?
It's, you would think we'd script these because you're leading right into the biggest thing of all right here that I want to mention is mindset. Our students tend to get in their own head or get in their own way because they're used to the recipe and regurgitation model of teaching and learning. They're used to being told exactly what to do when they leave high school and come here. They are used to a certain way of doing things, and that's how you do it right. Matter of fact, example, and I was talking with you about this a little earlier. This past week, we have 58 presidential scholars, which are the top scholars at Lamar University, full ride, books, tuition, room and board, everything. 58. They're in the top 0.07% of scholars here on this campus. And where did I feel I needed to go with my speech to them as the Honors College Dean? They're all part of the Honors College. Talking about failure, talking about greatness and how to get there. These kids sometimes put so much pressure on themselves, just by themselves, that learner's mindset sometimes evaporates. That inquisitive capacity to learn, intrinsic capacity to learn, inquisitivism, it sometimes evaporates and goes, I have so much pressure right here. I just need to follow a checklist so I can get through this. I just want to get the A. Matter of fact, I look at some of the rate my professors and I see the professors who hand out A's are top rated and I take this class again. So why is that? Because I think that in all my years of public ed, and I've had 11 years in public education, ranging from elementary all the way up to high school in different scenarios, is that we somehow teach the learner not to have to think. I hate to say that, but if it's so prescriptive, if it's so easy, if all I have to do is follow this plan to pass this test, and I'm not given any opportunities to be innovative or creative, impact others, do something outside of myself, it's so easy to fall back to that default method of just like your parents tell me what I need to do. We'll go clean your room. It starts at that age. And then we expect that when we go to school. I just don't know that our students are spending the time that they need to really be able to enhance that learner's mindset that's natural and intrinsic to them. There's been a block after a block after a block because it's all about a grade. What gets measured gets done. It's quantitative. It's, here's the stick. Do you meet the stick? If you don't meet the stick, you can't go to that college. If you don't meet, this measurement point, you can't go there. It's become perpetuated in our schools. And I think that I'm not blaming anyone. I'm not blaming teacher. I'm not blaming student. I'm not saying that. I'm saying what it takes to be different, what it takes to rise above is to adopt the learner's mindset and have that ability to turn a challenge into an opportunity, not just for you, but for everyone around you, right? To get away from this thought that failure defines you. It's an incident, move forward from it. I have a board in the other room that quantifies the number of times I've failed in this role, or at least what I think I've failed in this role. And of course, in comparison to my entire team, I have the most tally marks, right? I've had a lot to learn, but I don't let that get me down. I look at those tally marks as a number of opportunities I've had to make a change, prioritize what needs to be done, and how I can then fuel what we're doing moving forward in the right direction. And that takes thought, that takes iteration, that takes care, passion. So I've been able to turn something that was theoretical that we taught, built, and helped other teachers do and make it practical here in the Honors College. It's a work in progress. I'm never going to have it all figured out. I'm never going to have everything, just right. But I also think just right's never good enough, which is why learner's mindset, I'm not going to say haunts me. It lives in me because I'm always looking for a better way to do things, right? So maybe it does haunt me in some ways.
So again, I just want to reiterate something and summarize some key ideas I think that you've touched on. And I also want to really get clear on the context with which you work and where you're at. So as the Dean of the Honors College, you are dealing with the best of the best students. These are the best students, the students who've gotten the A's, and they know how the system works, and they are able to perform and achieve more than other students. But you're also recognizing that they have a tendency to know how the system works. And if you do anything outside of the system, they're not comfortable with it. Now, I also know from our conversations and earlier on in this conversation that you have been introducing them to the learner's mindset, and you're getting them to think differently, and you're getting them to leverage their capacity to be innovative and creative and to live in that higher order level of thinking. But when push comes to shove, or when time constraints are causing pressure, or when life happens, they'll default back to that checklist that they know because it's what they did to get them through school. And that natural intrinsic learner's mindset that we all see in children, which we do argue in our literature, in our book, suggests that attitude, that learner's mindset, is somewhat quenched as students go along. And as those students move through school, they become very proficient at checking off the boxes. And so when you get them at your level, you have to open up the world to them again by having them readopt or reignite that natural learner's mindset that made them who they were, and have them step away from that checklisting process to be able to actually do those creative pathways, to make those meaningful connections, to look around the world that they are in, and to do things in a way that's going to benefit others and that is going to be different. And so they combine different things and make those meaningful connections. So I know you're not laying blame, but systemically, maybe our system leads people to that.
I know, because I've been there. I've been in that system teaching where It's all about the standard. It's all about the end of course exam. It's all about the what we used to call them C-scope exam. And those are the benchmarks to get to the big, FCAT, Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test, or STAR test, which is our standardized test in the state of Texas. So I get that. There's no room or time for creativity, in a mindset that's specifically focused on passing a test.
So
Which can
we're
be a
preparing
challenge.
our students for the test, but we're not necessarily preparing them for life if we keep on this approach. Now, this I know we've talked about this as well. So you've introduced the students to learner's mindset. You're getting them to make those meaningful connections through e-portfolios. What are some of the other things you're doing to help students change their thinking about learning, and to adopt a different approach to learning? What are some of the practical things that you would encourage other people in your position of leadership when you're working with groups of innovative, adaptive students who have a tendency to fall back into that fixed mindset, systematic behaviorist approach? What are some of the other things that you are doing within your organization to help these students stay with that learner's mindset?
Oh gosh. So don't resort to hiding behind risk. Model the behavior that you want to see in others. That's the biggest thing I think the biggest impact I can make, especially when I'm in situations where the opportunity opens. When we're sitting around dialoguing at the table, instead of, kind of worried about someone else thinking a certain way or judging me. I in my first year, I did lots of listening. I'm always taking in, taking in, taking in. But from that, I'm looking for opportunities as I take in. How can I possibly help here? When we're dialoguing at the table in the dean's meeting, academic affairs, what can I share with them that would help them see or work with us or collaborate with us? So really it's all about not not being fearful, stepping outside of your comfort zone a little bit, modeling the behavior you expect to see. Not missing an opportunity means every presentation that I have, I share my BHAG, how, why, what, all of those things, actually in the order of what, why, then how, and then what, and then usually who. Sometimes I'll do who at the beginning, it depends on the slide, but I'm always taking that opportunity to share. And I feel as though when I listen to other people, kind of circling back to that, I can see where their thinking is. So when I was talking about mindset and failure at the presidential banquet, our president of our university leaned over and he's like, "So you know about mindset?" And he goes, "And who did you say wrote the Grit book?" And I said, "Angela Duckworth." And we're talking about passion and persistence and these, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." He's very much excited about it. So I'm listening to where people are and kind of figuring out who are some of these key people that are going to help me do some of the things that I, I envision us in the direction we're going in the academy, in the honors college, and how can I then take that vision and share that with others so that this can multiply. So it's not just me, riding a lone ship, or, and I see the university in little pockets moving in that direction. And I'm hoping we'll all get together and I'm modeling for as many departments as I can what we do here so they can see, how does this work? Where are you going with this? What's your bigger picture? But again, always room to grow. And another big thing is my staff. We're all on the same page. We all work. I'm very much a bottom up leader. We all agree on everything, even when it comes down to job posts. So if you're leading a team of people, or administrator leading a team of people, it's so good to have your staff really have that um, opinion or input on things, because they are more likely to engage with it and be excited about it just like you, right? And go after they understand your vision the more you engage people around you, especially even the naysayers. Sometimes they'll come around normally if you give them, if they see that consistency across time. Oh, she's going to do her why statement, she always does. But they learn to accept and adopt that with you, even if they're pulling teeth a little bit, because they see the greater good, they see the bigger picture, they see that you care about the students, they see the passion behind it. So it's not always easy, but you consistently live your statements, your goals, your why, your big picture. Don't let anything get in the way.
So again, I'm hearing another key thread or two key ideas. One is uh, you have to model or live what it is that you believe. And
Yes.
so you live in this world of a learner's mindset of constant evaluation, analysis, synthesis, and creation. You're
Mhm.
bringing people along with you. So it isn't just top down. You're constantly sharing all those key fundamental ideas as to how you are evaluating, how you're analyzing, and then how you're starting to synthesize these ideas. You get input from others so that you aren't the only one who's driving this. The group drives it, right? So there's a collaborative component to this in the modeling. And as you model, and you consistently and maybe persistently model these key ideas, people start to grow to expect these things, and they
Yes.
start to see how the connections are being made,
Yes.
right? So it does help in that regard. The other thing I'm picking up again is that you introduced this notion of grit, and you mentioned that you were at a
Banquet.
function
Mhm.
banquet, and somebody leaned over and said, "Tell me more about this grit." Angela Duckworth's book,
Mhm.
right? Now, I've heard a lot of key ideas that you and I have used in our courses and developing our learner's mindset. Now, I want to clarify something. When you adopt some of Angela Duckworth's ideas on grit, do you throw everything else out the window and just focus on grit, or do you add it in as a key piece and compensate for some of the issues and problems with grit? In the same way that we all know from the research and experience that Carol Dweck's growth mindset is limited, cannot be applied as a treatment. It does not work. It does not work on its own. When you combine it with something like what we do within the learner's mindset, with the right type of an environment, with the right type of change in thinking, the change in learning. When you do that, the growth mindset then leads to the innovator's mindset, and then ultimately can lead to the learner's mindset. So, can you sort of expand this idea of how these little tidbits of information come to play a role, and where they fit, and why is that the case, and why can't you just adopt everything that Duckworth talks about in her book?
If you adopt everything, then nothing becomes a priority. I constantly think of that. So I take each piece I read, each thing that I look at that's meaningful to me, a post, whatever it may be. I'm picking out what I believe the key point is, right? And I use that and add that to the collective. So if I have, what you talked about earlier, 40x, the principles of 40x, the influencer model, the Simon Sinek's why, and I have all these pieces here. I'm thinking, how does this piece add to that, or change my thinking in a way that I didn't consider this, and now I have to shift this way. And I'm not afraid to do that because I know it takes time. And I'm a big fan of, and one of the things I said at the banquet the other day was don't take shortcuts. Because shortcuts really you're kind of negating all the work that you're doing, and the long-term consequence of that could end up being a total flop, or you have to change everything you did. So I look at, for me, it's trigger words, it's keywords. I see certain, I pick up on certain parts of Angela Duckworth's work, and I think, okay, what I'm doing here, do I have passion behind it? Am I persistent? Am I consistent? Am I gritty enough to get through some of these challenges? I had an experience this past week, actually over the last couple of weeks, that just, I told you, kind of turned my brain to mush a little bit, and I had to get through a very difficult process. But I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew it was going to be challenging. I knew it was going to be difficult, and it was all those things and then some. It took a little bit of mental strain, but now I'm on the other side of that. I'm liberated. I was, persistent. I guess I could say gritty enough to get through the challenge. Things sometimes you're going to find a wall. Sometimes you got this great idea, and then all of a sudden, boom, you hit a wall. Okay, well, do I cower down to the wall and just kind of stare at the top, wishing for ways to get over? Do I start incrementally climbing over that wall? Do I jump over that wall? What do I do? How do I do it? What's the best thing to do? So for me, when I'm pulling together ideas, research, things, I'm pulling together keywords that I can then fit into my plan, iterate, change it a little bit, tweak it a little bit. This is why I consistently go back over my goals, consistently go back over my plans, my writings, my inspiration, all those things. It's just over and over and over. It never ends. And that's what makes us, better at what we do. example, I'm working on a slide deck, and I'll share it with my team. Once I'm done, my team is going to get in there and say, I don't think we should include that. That's too much information. I don't know if we want to go there. Do you really want to put that? They're going to hack it up. And I look at it as a great thing because I know I don't look at it as a failure or, oh, got to be perfect for my, I'm the dean. I got to be perfect. No, I look at it as they are making what my work better. So I love the collaborative process of this. So, you know, standing on the things that I believe and actually walking the walk and not talking the rhetoric. Make sense?
It does. I'm going to keep on going back to why we're having this conversation, and that is I want to reiterate and just tease out what you're talking about here. It's you live in a state of ongoing evaluation, analysis, synthesis, and then creating these new ideas. You live in the learner's mindset where challenges, even the challenge that you experienced the last couple of weeks was, you know, is going to be tough, but it's going to be better. You're looking to a bigger picture.
Ahead.
Yeah, you're constantly taking a look at the plan, which is constantly changing, but yet there is a plan. There's some
Yes.
key foundational ideas, the why, the what, the how, the who. There's some key things. There's some things that you've nailed down that will be sort of your key stopping points along the way in your journey, but everything else is open. Everything else is open, and even some of the key things can be modified and tweaked and adjusted. And sometimes it's just a matter of maybe turning the cup a little bit to see it
Yeah.
from a different perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
I broke my favorite cup, which I used
I
to use as an
know.
example. Anyway, so it's a non-negotiable, ever-present state of evaluation, analysis,
Yes.
synthesis, creation. But yet, it's moving towards that trajectory. The other thing that I think that you've mentioned that I think is extremely important, and this is something that I think the system of education might have done a disservice to the notion of collaborative work. Students bristle against group work, right?
Yeah.
Because there's social loafers, there's people who aren't really doing what they should be doing, and you know that. So group work really hasn't worked well. But yet, everything you're doing involves your team. Everything.
Everything.
So, and the difference I'm hearing is that your team knows why. They
Yes.
know what the what
Everything.
is. They know how. They know what the purpose is.
Yeah.
They are constantly hearing what goals that you have. They know what the plan is. They help build the plan. They own the plan as much as you own the plan, right? You've got this common purpose of working towards benefiting your learners and taking these highly motivated young minds who want to just change the world, and you help them
Mhm.
navigate pathways that they can really take advantage of their capacity and their determination to make a difference, right? So you are living the learner's mindset, which is an ongoing tough iterative process. You're picking and choosing parts that'll fit here. It's almost like a puzzle. You've got this ball that's got a puzzle, and as you're going along, you hear something, you read something, go, oh my gosh, there's a piece that I can fit in right
Yes.
here.
Yeah, that's
That
a good.
right. So
Mhm.
as you're going along, if I'm hearing you correct, and maybe we can talk about this just before we wrap up. So as you're going along and you're building things, would it be fair to say that you're noticing that there's something missing here? I need to tweak that. So in
Always.
your evaluation, in your analysis, you don't get it finished, but you're also always open. You're
Yeah.
always looking for that other
Always.
piece, that other tweak,
Always.
that other adjustment. So is that fair? Can you expand on that? And has that always been the case, or is that something that you really have developed with the learner's mindset? Or, you know, because some people say, well, that's just your intrinsic nature, and that's the way that you are. Well,
Mm.
is that the
Mm-mm.
case?
No, matter of fact, one of my staff members came over to this building. I have staff in two different buildings. And last night she said, you're always thinking ahead, always ahead. And that's true because, I know the mess that I walked into, not so much in honors, but over in the high school that I run, the Texas Academy. So dialing back to your question though, I remember stepping into the assistant professorship over in the College of Education and how frightened I was that, oh, I was going to have to think of these ideas and do these new things. And initially, my task was create the Microsoft Teachers with Technology course and just replicate it in Blackboard. Well, that's pretty easy. I can go in there and do that. Then I met this guy named Dwayne Hrapnik. I thought, oh, he's going to throw me for a loop for everything I ever known in public education. Because my initial thought every time you brought something up was, I need to go ask my director. I need to go, and it was always that fear of moving forward because someone's going to block me. It's not good enough, and then I realized that I was in my own headspace. And it took me about a year. Now you argued and told me it's always been there. I know it's always been there. I just kind of had to pull it out of you. It took me a whole year to really, really see that I was holding my own self back. And it's partially because I feared failure. All the things that I've said today, if you can imagine the opposite, that's kind of the shell I lived under. But again, I was a product of 11 years in public education. Again, not blaming anyone, but I felt that everything I needed to do had to come from the district, had to follow these perfect standards that they had laid, that I had to go ask the principal if I want to, run down the hall for a second, those things. And that kind of takes the human nature, the thinking out of everything. It makes you feel like you're kind of trapped a little bit. And I would suggest if I were to go back to those years, I would do things totally different. I would set things up the way I have here in the Honors College, where I've got, goal where we want to go. And I can fit in all the things that I need to do in public education, all those things, like what they're expecting us to do fits right here. I can still be creative and do all the things I want to do, with the students, not get in my own way. So if I were to turn around and go back to a classroom, totally different mindset. And that's because I'm living it, I'm learning it as I go. I'm learning the learner's mindset. I've learned how to learn. I figured out what helps me learn best. And sometimes when you say learn how to learn, you think, what in the world does that actually mean? But you have to know what works for you. And for you, we were talking earlier this morning and you had mentioned something about, 3 C's. And so I thought that he tags certain words and that's, or other little things, that we talk about. I tag words and I add it to my bigger picture. It's not just read it and done. We read books, I share them with my staff. I highlight a few things and we talk about those few things. So we consistently are growing, consistently changing, learning, consistently learners. And I think that's where learning how to learn for me has been a combination of listening to others, collaboration, iteration, failure, inquisitivism, fear a little bit. I get nervous sometimes, but I step over that and I actually stomp it down. If I notice fear creeping in, I'm like, forget you, move forward. You can sit there. I've got this. It's a little bit of head talk for me. Get out of your own head talk.
I really appreciate that. And making reference to our earlier conversations, we were getting set up. An aged, gray, old man like myself, I'm always learning. I'm always failing. I'm always adjusting. Mm-hmm. And I talked about learning the value of the 3 C's, which is you didn't cause it, you can't control it, you can't cure it. And this fits within a certain discipline that I'm in the process of being immersed in. I'm looking at totally new things. Mm-hmm. Is it easy? No. Mm-hmm. I've been in a deep dive and a journey the last several months, as I mentioned earlier. But in the last week or two, as I start to see how these pieces fit, mm-hmm. right, I let go of the things that make me feel comfortable. And I recognize, well, I failed here, I failed there, I need to adjust this. As you start to really honestly evaluate and analyze, and then you start to figure out, well, within these constraints, can't control it, didn't cause it, can't cure it, what can I do? Well, you control the variables that you can, and you work with those who have the issue that you might be dealing with, right? And so there's this ongoing iterative process in everything that we do. And I know I was actually I was hunting for some information in a correspondence we had. And one of my boys is having a challenge in some aspect of his life. And you reminded me, well, think about it. He grew up living the learner's mindset. He's got somebody who models that he's going to be okay. And here we are a couple months later, a month and a half later, And yeah, he's actually doing okay. And that natural learner's mindset, which I helped him to preserve, because I would argue we all intrinsically have it, has resurfaced, and he has been embracing life in the old way that he used to. So challenges, struggles, problems, adjustments, and on to something different.
But
And that's what I'm hearing here
you
from you.
can't, yeah. And you know, I keep saying to myself in my head over and over again is you can't just talk about it. You can't just talk. You have to actually take the step to get into it. That a word immerse. Immerse yourself, you know, in the change. Immerse yourself in the learner's mindset. Think, you know, talking about it is okay. Yeah, you know what it means. You know what intrinsic capacity means to learn and all these things, but to really put yourself into it and really like, even if you're not in a situation where you are the lead, but you are putting yourself into that learner's mindset, you start to live it, you start to breathe it, you start to realize all the opportunities around you, you start to see what you should have seen before, but you have to step out of that old mindset and get into the learner's mindset. And I think the old mindset may be stuck in the growth mindset. It's good, but it's not all, right? And so I think, yeah, you have to take that step. If you don't, you'll never get here. Writing a paper, posting something on your e-portfolio, building a project isn't real until you do it. You know, authentic learning. So,
That is a wonderful note to end on. It's not really real until you live it, until you actually make it real,
yeah.
make it authentic. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you reflecting on your journey. I know how busy you are. And I'm looking forward to sharing this with the grad students and all the other students and people that we have an opportunity to share these ideas with. Thanks again.